Welcome to the Struggle and Strive podcast. I am your host, Estil Wallace. When I think about getting my life together or getting my shit together, regardless of your age, one of the things that comes up over and over again is this concept of reparenting or parenting myself. Not to throw stones at our parents, but just now that we're grown-ups and we're struggling with adulthood, how do I take responsibility for myself, my actions, potential outcomes, relationships, etc.? So today we're going to get into some theory and to some real tactical ways that you can work on reparenting yourself. All right, let's get right into it. So this first thing we're going to talk about, I'm going to draw a little graph here. So if you imagine we're starting at birth, and we're going to draw a graph of time. As time goes on, we generally, this is most people, maybe not everyone, can pick up two different routes. So the first one we're going to call ideals, and we'll break down what that looks like. So this is early childhood here. We're going to be a little fuzzy on the age, but let's say birth to somewhere between 5 and 8 years old. In this time frame of childhood, we're very much a singular person. We're not split. We're not divergent. There's no duality, or there's very little. Somewhere in later parts of childhood, somewhere between 5 and 8 years old, we discover that we can alter or influence outcomes by being dishonest. So we learn how to lie through commission, like outwardly saying something happened that didn't, or saying something didn't happen that did. Or we learn to lie by omission, by just leaving out the nasty parts of a story. These types of infractions are perfectly healthy in a child who's developing. It's a normal developmental part of their life. But this creates a divergence within ourselves. And it's healthy to some degree when you're a child to test those boundaries, to explore what dishonesty looks like and what honesty looks like and what those outcomes look like. But it goes a lot deeper than that, because once we leave childhood and we get into adolescence and early adulthood, on one side, on the ideal side, in childhood, we're learning trust, safety. We've got education in here, relationships, career, lifelong friendships. Hopefully you've got a few friends by the time you reach my age. Most of us don't have more than a short handful of friends as the time you get into your 40s, and I think that's probably a healthy number. But you would assume in a healthy life, you're going to have a few close friends that have known you since you were young, hopefully. Beyond that, you've got travel and exploration, going out and seeing the world, investment. You've got memories. Bill Perkins is a wealthy guy that I follow, and he wrote a book called Die with Zero. In that book, he really emphasizes how valuable it is building memories and investing in memories, shared experiences with the people you love. This is all part of the development of a healthy life cycle. I don't know if we know this or intuitively we're sort of magnetized towards it when we're young and as we begin to age into adulthood. But if I've diverged, like let's say you grew up in a house where you learned that lying would save you from getting your ass beat by your father, all of a sudden lying, while it does create a divergence within yourself, might be a survival skill. So then you double down on dishonesty. But let's talk about it over here. Over here we've got dishonesty, fractured relationships, poor diet. We've also got alcohol. Let's call that excessive alcohol. It's also drugs. And to be clear, we've talked about drugs and alcohol quite a bit on this show. When I put drugs and alcohol over here, I don't mean, any drugs and alcohol. When you're wrestling with yourself over whether you should or shouldn't, it falls into this track really plainly. We've got self-deception here. This happens when there's a divergent inward path, like in my actions don't meet up with my ideals, with my beliefs, with my values. It's called cognitive dissonance. We'll just list it on the top here. Cognitive dissonance, when it's extended over a prolonged period of time, creates measurable detriment to your psychology. Attempting to degrade your value system so that you can justify behaviors that are otherwise unresolved in your own mind. It leads to depression, high levels of anxiety. It leads to substance use disorders. It leads to suicide in some cases. This is a super, super unhealthy way to live. And there's going to be varying degrees of it depending on you, depending on your life. But I would encourage you to have a look at your own life and ask yourself, where am I being dishonest with myself? Where am I being untrue to myself? Where am I doing things I know I shouldn't? Because with every inch that direction, I'm becoming this ghost of a person. I'm becoming this shell of the person that I wish I were. And it is very difficult to find joy, to find purpose and meaning when I'm living in this divergent path. Now, if you're a person who is an alcoholic or a drug addict and you're in recovery, this is probably spelling out a lot for you. This isn't confined just to people who struggle with addiction. This is something that is present in everyone to some degree or other. For those of us that do struggle with addiction, it becomes a hard line into divergence generally. There are so many examples of people at various social economic levels that this becomes the main metric. Am I being true to myself? Doesn't matter if I know people that are very wealthy when they walk into the rooms of recovery and they can point at a scale like this and show me all the places they wish they were different. And I got to tell you, when you live in a world where you wish not only that the world were different, which is slowly slipping into literal insanity, but wishing where you were different, living a life where I wish I was a different person, that is a very unfulfilling and empty way to live. And most people who live that way, that far into divergence, don't live very long. That's not where you're seeing extended lifespans. When we can course correct, recovery is a great place to talk about that. Not everybody is in recovery. Not everybody suffers, at really dire levels like you do in addiction. But let's say you've been overweight. You've been eating just blindly, not exercising. You're 35 years old. You wake up one day and you check yourself out in the mirror, and the things that you've been ignoring, you can't ignore anymore. And you look at yourself and you go, God, I got to do something. This is an aha moment. It's an epiphany. This is a come to Jesus moment. This is one of those rare instances where we get a little glimmer of truth, a little glimmer of reality, and we think to ourselves, all right, it's time to make a shift. And again, it doesn't matter if you're talking about drugs and alcohol, it doesn't matter if you're talking about food, it doesn't matter if you're talking about an abusive relationship, verbally or physically. When we allow our lives to diverge this much from our ideals and you become aware of it, you can make a course correction at any stage. As long as it's before you're dead, you can change your ways. If you look at Uncle Scrooge in the old Charles Dickens story, he's right at the end of his life. He's at the very tail end. He's at the bottom of the ninth inning, and he's visited by three spirits. And they show him the error of his ways. And when he wakes up in the morning, it hasn't been 3 days, it's been a single night, and he hasn't missed Christmas yet. And he has a brand new opportunity to try and live a new life, a new lease on life. And he takes advantage of the opportunity. I would encourage you to ask yourself, has that happened to me? Is that something that is coming for me? Because if you're living in a way that's not true to yourself, there's going to be a strong desire to make a change. We can fool ourselves into thinking, I've done too much damage. It's been too long. I'm never going to change. I'm lazy. I start getting into negative self-talk. I'm lazy. I'm a piece of shit. I don't deserve good things. That's all lies. None of that's true. You are a child of God. You absolutely deserve to have a good life. And the only thing, generally speaking, in most cases, the only thing standing between us living our best, fullest, truest life is our own limitations, our own self-limiting beliefs, our own doubts. So at any point in this continuum, you could decide to make an exit, anytime right up until the end of your life, and you can start over again. There's so many examples of people who either got sober later in life or people who started businesses, entrepreneurs. Look at Ray Kroc, for example, was 52 years old. And if you haven't seen the movie, The Founder, about Ray Kroc, they don't really talk about his early life much. You don't get all of the backstory, but you get him at 52 years old as a traveling salesman selling milkshake machines, he's hard on his luck. He makes money. It's not like he's dead broke, but he's really struggling. He's on the road. He's missing, he's not home with his wife, and he's listening because this is like the 50s, right? So he's listening to self-help records. And as he's sitting there, like trying to brainwash himself into positive thinking, into making better sales, I really identify with that guy. I really identify with Ray Kroc at 52, beating his head against the wall, trying to figure out how to get ahead. I did it much younger, but I identify with that state of being where you're trying so hard and you're just getting kicked in the teeth, and there's a better way. A guy like that in his mid-50s built an empire. Same thing with Colonel Sanders, the KFC guy. He was bound and determined to make a business out of this chicken recipe. This guy became exponentially wealthy, very successful entrepreneur. And there are tons of cases like this where people get off of the path they're on and onto one that fits their ideals. This doesn't always, going back to this graph, this doesn't always have to be super detrimental behavior like drinking too much and eating horribly and allowing yourself to be in abusive relationships. Another thing that could be included on the divergent path would be not living up to your potential. Depending on where you are in your career, have you thought to yourself ever, or even recently, I'm made for more than this? I'm capable of more than this? Something inside of you telling you that I could do more than this? If I could just find the right leverage, I could accomplish so much more. If you've had thoughts like that, you too are on this divergent path. And God, the universe, the world is pulling you, is urging you, I believe it's the voice of God, is urging you to start marrying your actions with your ideals. This is a very difficult process. Entrepreneurship is hard. Getting into incredible physical shape is hard. Becoming the type of man that could attract the type of woman that would be a great long-term spouse for you is hard. Becoming a good parent is hard. I want to get from and bring to this experience of life just a short handful of things. Love and belonging, for example. I want to continue to pursue a passionate relationship with my wife. I want to raise and love and cherish the time and memories I build with my children. I want to help other men find health and find God. I want to make a few dollars so I can be a good provider, so I can provide for my family. I want time freedom, right? I want to be in good physical shape. The things that I'm interested in, that I believe most men are interested in, they're not wild, they're simple at their core, but what they are is they're long range. These are long range targets, and they're not a highly articulated target. They're more like target cadences. I want to be in the rhythm of fitness. I want to be in the rhythm of romance. I want to be in the rhythm of financial security. I want to be in the rhythm of parenthood. I want to be in the rhythm of helping men find God. Each one has a long, long road ahead of it, and none of them really has a destination. It's not really about getting somewhere. At what point do you become the best parent? Parenthood is fleeting. It's a part of life that won't last forever. My children are young right now, and as they age, I'm watching them grow and age before my eyes. And what I want is to cherish the time with them and to build meaningful memories with them. I want to enrich their lives. I want them to be able to look back on their childhoods with more fondness than I do. Hopefully a lot more. I want to be able to, I'm in love with my wife. I love our relationship outside of being business partners, outside of being parents, outside of being, partners in all these things. And that's what I wanted. But almost completely separate from that, I just love being with her. I love exploring the world with her. I love doing things with her, like spending time with her. She and I have been having the same endless conversation for 17 years. It's been fantastic. Same thing with fitness. These are all long-range things that I want to continue to explore and work on and be diligent with. And yet, none of them has a destination. Each of them has this same push-pull tension as to whether or not I'm operating in a way that's succinct with my ideals. And it's really simple. You know, yes, I want to have a strong career and leave a strong financial legacy for my family and be a good provider, and not just for them but for my community. And in doing so, it's easy to work long hours. I think a lot of men are prone to that. We want to make up for lost time. We want to get ahead, fill in the blank with achievement there. And yet you get to work in too many 40, 50, 60, especially if you're running a startup company. In the beginnings of Cornerstone, I worked 60, 70-hour weeks regularly in the first couple of years. And what suffered during those times was my relationship with my children. And I'm not trying to go into regret. I'm using it as a balance and counterbalance. People talk about work-life balance and time management. I mean, those are fancy words. It's really something that I use with a gut check. I don't want to, I'm going to speak for myself here, not for anybody else. In order to achieve really, really high levels of success, and I'm not talking about even top 5 or top 1% levels of success. I'm talking about 0.001% levels of success. To be that high of an achiever in any one domain, I really, truly believe you have to sacrifice other interests in your life. If I'm ever going to reach for being a billionaire, I have more than a suspicion that I won't be a great dad. I'm just not going to be around enough. It would require too much of my time and my energy and my focus to really be the type of present father that I want to be. Same thing with fitness. I've been on the fitness journey for a long time, 18 years. I've been in and out of the gym, all kinds of diets. I've done all kinds of steroids. I've done the whole gamut of fitness stuff. That being said, I reached a point a few years ago where I realized if I was going to continue to pursue this much farther, it was really going to cost me in other areas of my life. And that's where I had to make a decision. I'm not going to try and tell you what your mix is going to be. Your mix can be whatever you want it to be. And my priorities have changed as I've aged and gotten older. But I reached a point where fitness wasn't as important to me. It's still important to be, I want to look good and feel good, and I'd like to add some longevity to my life. But do I have to be the biggest guy around? Especially at the cost of my physical health, like when I'm talking about steroids specifically, talking about the time consumption in the gym, which then eats into my career, it eats into my time with my kids, and eats into my time with my wife. I found a balance between how much time I spend in the gym, how much brain damage I associate with watching what I eat. I've associated a balance with how much time I spend at work. And as an entrepreneur, I'm sort of never working and sort of always working, if that makes sense. I don't have a set schedule. I don't have anywhere I have to be. Rather, what I have is a never-ending task list, and it just grows weekly, monthly, quarterly, and those things need to get done. So whether I, hide out in one of our offices for 70 hours a week, or if I break away from that mentality that I have to be, relegated into a cubicle somewhere and, headphones on and nobody bother me, or whether I can sort of break that paradigm and say, you know what, I'm available for calls and sort of chunk my focused work into 2 to 4 hour increments and space them throughout the week and sort of space out meetings and when I'm available for this and that. I've learned to be able to balance, running more than one company while getting to the gym most days, while being home with my kids by 3 o'clock pretty much every day and spending all weekend with my kids. So, and we have date nights on Mondays. So my wife and I get some alone time as well. Living a balanced life like this is important to me. And I didn't know how to do it 20 years ago. Mostly, I would say, because I was newly sober and I'd lived a life with very divergent from my ideals. My actions didn't meet my ideals at all, my values. Likewise, I didn't have any boundaries of any kind. I didn't know what was acceptable and what wasn't. I didn't know anything about, understanding time management or self-care. So the next thing I want to go into, besides cognitive dissonance, is something that we call gradient or graduated boundaries. All right, so as we talk about boundaries, what I really want to start with is what's at the center of my life. This is where I've got my marriage. This is where my children are. This is where my fitness is. This is where my prayer and spirituality is, my routines, and my disciplines. This is my inner circle. This is my main core boundary. Part of my spirituality not only is prayer and meditation, it's also sponsorship, right? I'm working with other men, helping them rediscover, reignite that fire of the human spirit within them, help them find God. Outside of this is everything else. So we'll draw another ring on the outside of this. This isn't going to represent everything else. This will represent more stuff. So in here, this is where I've got friends. This is the gym that I go to, right? Because I'm out in public. I'm seeing a different mix of people. This is maybe my church. This is my AA home group. This is the grocery store that I go to. I've got extended family in here, right? My in-laws, my cousins. This is people that I do business with. This is all stuff that's still a part of my life, but isn't really part of my inner life. Then, the boundaries, as we go farther out, they get softer and softer. This is pretty rigid. We've got gradient or graduated boundaries as a template for how I live my life. I like to call this center the bubble. This is my home. This is my marriage. This is my time with my children. This is my time with God. This is my journey to become more like the man my Creator wants me to be. This is my fitness routines. This is the really tight stuff inside of my bubble, and this has to do with how much access people have to me. This has to do with what I will allow in my life, from the foods that I eat to the drugs or alcohol that I consume to the people that I spend time with, the people, I mean, at any level, whether it's even exchanging text messages, something as shallow as that. As we move outward, out into the wider circles, I'm not going to draw another circle, but I'll just give you some examples of other things that fit farther outside of here. Out here, you've got, the general public. You're getting gas in a different city. You're getting gas on the other side of town. People that you might, and I'm very extroverted. I make friends everywhere I go. I strike up conversations with strangers everywhere. My wife will tell you, she drives her nuts. But out here isn't just the general public. Out here is casinos, the trap house, abusive relationships, prostitution, pornography, drugs, alcoholism. Out here is where violent crime lives. When I was growing up, not as a kid, when I got sober in my late 20s, it was kind of two different growth trajectories converging. One, I was changing my life, doing a big overhaul in the way I responded to the world, in a 12-step program, but simultaneously, I was in my late 20s. So I think a lot of people in that age category are also growing in their own way, becoming more of an adult, finding ways to reparent themselves or hopefully exploring it. At that tender time in my life, I wasn't able to discern what belonged inside of my bubble and what was out here. And that caused me a lot of pain, caused me a lot of broken relationships, a lot of disappointment, a lot of frustration. Getting clear about what's allowed inside of my inner circle, and then what's allowed inside of my slightly outer circle. Acquaintances are out there. Let's put that in here. Getting clear about this and getting clear about what I don't want in my life gives me a much more accurate roadmap to start following. Here's another thing I'll put out here. Being up all night. I go to bed between 9 p.m. and 10 p.m. pretty much every night. It doesn't matter if I'm in Europe. It doesn't matter if I'm in the Bahamas. It doesn't matter if I'm overseas. It doesn't matter if I'm at home in my regular routine. I try to keep my routine regardless of where I'm at when I travel. And it's for a simple reason. I am responsible for parenting myself. I want to go to bed by 9 or 10 because I want to get up by 5 or 6. I want to get up by 5 or 6 so that I can exercise my body. I can spend time in prayer, meditation, and I can approach my money-making activities and my time with my family in an appropriate and balanced and slightly even aggressive way. I'm hungry after my life. Now, if you have a career path where you work night shifts specifically and you're building something, hey, more power to you. Obviously, that doesn't apply to you. But if there's something deep inside of your heart that's like, fuck, I should go to bed earlier because I just can't seem to pull it together before noon. This is you. This is me in my younger years. What I'm really reaching for here is to find a path for my life that meets my ideals as best as possible. I am trying with a very serious will, as my own guardian, as the person responsible for my well-being, to build a life for myself and my family that is full of joy and purpose and direction and memories. And in order to do that, I've got to have some sense of boundaries. I've got to have some sense of what's allowed and what's not allowed. And I'm not talking about artificial rules that society makes up or that religion makes up or that, you read somewhere on the internet. I'm talking about my own self-directed, God-inspired direction for my life. What do I want? What do I believe God wants for me? What do I want to deliver to other people? What kind of value do I want to bring to the community that I serve, to my family? With those things in mind, I can create a structure for my life that serves both the people in my life and serves myself. What I want is to be of service to God and the people around me, to my family, my wife, my children, the men that I help, the people that I do business with. I want to deliver real value to people. I want to make the world a better place in some small way, no matter how small that is. And I can't do that effectively if I'm just doing whatever, flying by the seat of my pants. I remember very vividly when I was in my late 20s, maybe 27, 28, and I hadn't really come down and settled on a direction for my life yet. And I was newly sober a year or two and still feeling a bit lost. I had thought for many years if I could just get off drugs and alcohol, that my life would be so much better. And it was. It's not that it wasn't, but at a year and a half, 2 years sober, I really started to wake up to the reality that I wasn't a grown-up yet. And I wasn't doing grown-up shit. I would still stay up late. I was still chasing tail. I was still, wasting time, distracted, not centered on what I really wanted out of life. And then coming to grips with the fact that the things that I really wanted out of life were not instantaneous. I couldn't get them overnight. I couldn't get them next week. They were cadences that I sort of had to adapt to and catch up with. And each of them was hard. Getting into the gym and then making real strides and then leveling up and taking that further. That's hard to do. It's really hard to do. But people do it, and it's totally possible. Same thing with relationships and marriage. Same thing with parenthood. Same thing with entrepreneurship. Same thing with your career. You can spend time sort of tinkering with these things, but once I became, captivated by, hey, this is what I want, and I started to write this stuff down on paper, this is what I really want for my life, all of a sudden it became clear that there was a whole lot of stuff I was going to start saying no to. Like, you're not going to catch me at the casino on Saturday night or on Tuesday night or pretty much any night. In fact, Nicole and I went to Vegas a few years ago, a short weekend trip, just the two of us. And I got to tell you, I don't think we spent $1 in a casino. We went to eat really good food, and we went and saw a couple shows, and we went shopping a little bit, and we spent a couple nights together as a couple. I don't think we were until maybe the plane ride home, or maybe once we got home, that we realized we hadn't actually gambled at all. And it's not because we hate gambling or because we think it's some sort of horrible thing. It's that we have reparented ourselves into adulthood, and we have a structure for our lives that doesn't really include throwing away money at the casino. No judgment towards people who derive joy from that, but I don't. I don't derive any joy from that. I don't derive joy from staying up all night drinking or staying up all night, watching images of other people having sex or, The last thing I want is I don't want a relationship with a phone screen or a computer screen. I want a relationship with Nicole, my wife. I've been pursuing that relationship for 17 years, and it's very important to me. It's really simple when you get clear about what you want in life to start Xing out all the stuff that doesn't fit into that box. In real estate, you call it a buy box. The things that you're looking for in a property, in an asset. When I get clear about what I want for my life as an adult, as a man, all of a sudden the buy box gets a little bit more articulated, a little bit more clear, and everything else turns into white noise. And that's a really healthy place to be, because at my age, I'm 47 now. At 47 years of age, it's no longer about, can I get away with something, or what can I sneak around? Like, I'm not interested in living a double life at all. I'm not interested in diverging my actions away from what I want, from my ideals, what I believe God wants for me. Rather, the metric that comes up time and time again is time. Is there enough time for me to reach my financial goals while not sacrificing the time I know it's going to take for me to be a good and present parent? Can I chase down both? Can I pursue both my career and my family life and my marriage, and not let my fitness get too far off the rails? These are the things that consume my thinking at this age, because I'm no longer interested in the things I used to be. I was interested in distraction. And the world is a big distracting place. There's anything you could possibly want to get interested in is out there. Anything that you didn't know you were going to get interested in can draw your attention almost instantly, especially with technology today. So my hope for you is that you can find within yourself a short handful, less than 6 probably, things that really fascinate you, that really capture and hold your attention for the long term, things that are good for you, that if you were the one responsible for yourself, would drive your everyday actions and help narrow your decision-making process. Because while time management is this thing that gets thrown around a lot, it really comes down, when I look at a 24-hour period, I want to make a little progress at being a dad, at being a husband, at being an entrepreneur, at being a servant of God, and at being in good physical shape. That's pretty much it. And that what I just said in a sentence is enough to fill the rest of the years of my life. So my hope for you is that you can do something similar in terms of getting clear about what you want to do, what you want to get from, and what you want to bring to this experience of life. And then you can start saying no to everything else so that you can make some real traction, make some real progress in your lives. In closing, today we've talked about diverging from our true self. And if that's a place that you're in, it's never too late to course correct and start taking the tough actions that will lead you to becoming more of the person that you want to be, that you're intended to be. As you do so, build a bubble for yourself. Decide what is allowed and what's not allowed, what's allowed to steal your time and your attention and what's not. No one else is going to do this for you. We call this reparenting for a reason. As adults, many of us are still very lost in this big and chaotic world. This is the time where you can reclaim your life. You decide to make the rules, you set the boundaries, you put the guardrails up so that you can get where you want to go in life. That's it for this episode. We'll see you next time.